Hello and welcome to Arise Your Mind. The word knight usually brings to mind a very specific image, doesn't it? A noble hero in shining armor, a champion of justice with a gleaming sword, riding a magnificent horse to rescue the innocent and win glory in honorable combat. We imagine chivalry, romance, and a life of thrilling quests filled with pageantry and honor. But the real life of a knight during the height of the medieval period in the 13th and 14th centuries was usually not romantic at all. It was a life born into rigid hierarchy, trained through brutal conditioning, and defined by the crushing weight of metal, debt, and duty. It was a world of extreme discomfort, financial ruin, and savage violence, only occasionally interrupted by moments of genuine glory. So tonight, we will leave the legends behind and see what it was really like. We will step into the suffocating prison of plate armor and explore the harsh economic realities that these warriors faced. We'll learn about the agonizing training they endured, the crippling expenses they carried, and why so many men born into this life died young, broken, and bankrupt. But before we dive in, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a simple and wonderful way to support the channel, and it means a great deal to me. I am also always curious to know where in the world and at what time you're rejoining me tonight, so I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. And now settle in, let the noise of the modern world fade away, and let us travel back to a time of mud, blood, and iron. Our story doesn't begin with a knight. It begins with a boy. Let's imagine that you are this boy. You are not yet a hero, not yet a warrior. You are simply a child, perhaps 7 years old, and you have just been sent away from home. Your father is a minor lord, a man who owns a modest estate, a stone manor house, and a few hundred acres of farmland worked by peasants. You are his second son. Your older brother will inherit everything. For you, there is only one path, the warrior class. You have been sent to live in the household of another lord, a friend or ally of your father, to begin your training as a page. This is not a school. This is an apprenticeship in violence. You wake before dawn in a cold, drafty castle chamber that you share with a dozen other boys. The stone walls weep with moisture. Your thin straw mattress does nothing to cushion the hard wooden bed frame beneath. You are always cold. The castle is never warm, even in summer. You dress quickly in rough wool clothing that itches against your skin, pulling on leather shoes that are already too small. Your day begins with menial labor. You serve the lord and his family at meals, carrying heavy platters of roasted meat, pouring wine into silver cups, and standing silently for hours while the adults eat and talk. You learn to move invisibly, to anticipate needs, to read the moods of powerful men. One mistake, one spill, and you will be struck across the face or beaten with a rod. This is not cruelty for its own sake. This is education. You are being taught absolute obedience. When you are not serving, you are training. You spend hours in the castle courtyard, a muddy expanse enclosed by high stone walls. Here, the master-at-arms, a scarred veteran knight with a voice like grinding stone, drills you relentlessly. You are given a wooden sword, heavier than you expect, and forced to practice the same overhead strike again and again until your small arms scream with exhaustion. You practice footwork, balance, and the basic guards. When you are too slow, the master strikes you across the shoulders with a leather strap. Pain is your teacher. You also learn to ride. Not the gentle ponies of a child's imagination, but real war horses, enormous destriers bred for battle. These animals are taller than you, powerful and temperamental. You are thrown onto the horse's back without a saddle at first, clinging desperately to its mane as it trots around the yard. You fall. You fall again and again, hitting the hard-packed earth with bone-jarring force. You learn that fear is irrelevant. You must master the horse, or it will master you. As you grow older, perhaps 12 or 13, you are promoted. You become a squire. Now the training intensifies. You are assigned to a specific knight, and you become his personal servant. You sleep outside his chamber door, ready to respond to his call at any hour. You polish his armor, a task that takes hours of repetitive scrubbing to remove every speck of rust. You sharpen his sword, maintain his saddle, and care for his warhorse, a beast worth more than your father's entire annual income. But you also begin to train in earnest for war. You are given your first real sword, and the weight of it is shocking. This is not a wooden practice blade. This is a tool designed to kill. You learn the brutal reality of combat. A sword fight is not an elegant dance. It is exhausting, chaotic, and terrifyingly fast. You practice in full armor now, or at least pieces of it. A helmet, a mail shirt, gauntlets. The weight is immense. A full suit of plate armor, which you will one day wear, weighs between 50 and 70 pounds. It is distributed across your entire body, but it is still an exhausting burden. You learn to move in this armor, to fight in it, to mount a horse while wearing it. You discover that the greatest enemy is not the sword of your opponent, but the heat. Inside the metal shell, especially in summer, the temperature becomes unbearable. Sweat pours down your face, stinging your eyes. Your breathing comes in ragged gasps, echoing inside the enclosed helmet. The smell is overpowering. Your own sweat, the metallic tongue of iron, and the rancid odor of the padded gambeson, the thick quilted jacket worn beneath the armor, which is never truly washed. You also learn the economics of knighthood, and this lesson is perhaps the harshest of all. A knight is not paid a salary. A knight is expected to fund himself. The cost is staggering. A suit of custom-fitted plate armor costs as much as a prosperous farm. A trained warhorse costs even more. Then there are weapons: swords, lances, daggers, maces. There is the tack and saddle, the pavilion tent for campaigns, the servants and grooms who travel with you. You realize with growing dread that when you are finally knighted, you will immediately be plunged into debt. The ceremony of knighthood, when it finally comes in your early 20s, is both a triumph and a burden. You spend the night before in the church, kneeling in prayer, ritually cleansing your soul. In the morning, you are dressed in white robes and brought before the Lord. He taps you on each shoulder with the flat of his sword. You swear an oath to protect the weak, to serve your Lord, to uphold the faith. The words are noble. The reality is something else entirely. You are now a knight, a warrior of the noble class. You have been training for this moment for 15 years. And now the true test begins. You are now a knight, and you quickly learn that the title itself is not a reward. It is a responsibility, and it is cripplingly expensive. You stand in your lord's armory, and a blacksmith helps you into your new suit of plate armor. This is the modern armor of the 14th century, the pinnacle of medieval military technology. It is not the crude chainmail of earlier eras. This is articulated steel, custom fitted to your body. The process of donning the armor takes nearly an hour, and it cannot be done alone. You begin with the arming doublet, a padded jacket that will cushion the impact of blows and prevent the metal from chafing your skin raw. Then come the sabatons, the steel shoes that encase your feet. Next, the greaves are strapped to your shins, then the cuisses to protect your thighs. Each piece is attached with a complex system of leather straps and buckles. The breastplate and backplate are lowered onto your torso and buckled at the sides. Your arms are encased in vambraces and rear braces. Gauntlets cover your hands. Finally, the helmet is placed over your head, and the world changes. Your vision is instantly reduced to a narrow slit. You can see forward, but your peripheral vision is gone. Turning your head is difficult. The helmet is heavy and restricts movement. Your hearing is muffled, every sound filtered through the metal shell. Your own breathing is amplified, a constant rasping rhythm that fills your ears. The heat inside is immediate, even on a cool day. You feel the weight pressing down on your shoulders, your hips, your knees. You take a step, and the armor moves with you, but it is not natural. Every motion requires slightly more effort. You are a man transformed into a walking fortress, and the price of that protection is your comfort and mobility. You quickly learn that this armor, while incredibly effective, is not impenetrable. A well-placed lance strike, a warhammer blow to the helmet, or a dagger thrust into the gaps at the joints can still kill you. The armor is your best chance of survival, but it is not a guarantee. It is simply a very expensive gamble. And it is expensive. You now understand the full weight of the financial burden. Your armor costs the equivalent of several years of income for a prosperous farmer. Your destrier, the enormous warhorse trained for combat, cost even more. These animals are not the gentle riding horses used for travel. They are bred for size, strength, and aggression. A destrier can weigh over a ton and is trained to bite, kick, and trample enemies on the battlefield. Maintaining this animal requires a dedicated groom, a constant supply of expensive grain, and a safe stable. But the costs don't end there. You must also pay for your own squire, the young man who serves you just as you once served another knight. You must pay for grooms to care for your horses. You will need at least 2 or 3, as war horses cannot be ridden constantly. You must pay for servants to maintain your equipment, to cook your meals on campaign, and to set up your camp. A knight does not travel alone. He travels with an entourage, and every single person in that entourage must be fed, clothed, and paid. To fund this lifestyle, you have only a few options. If you are lucky, your father has granted you a small estate, a manor with lands worked by peasant farmers. The income from this land, the rents and the taxes, might be enough to cover your expenses. But most knights are not so fortunate. You are the second son, remember. The estate went to your brother, so you must find another way. The most common solution is service. You pledge yourself to a great lord, a baron, or an earl, or even the king himself. In exchange for your military service, you are granted a stipend, a salary paid in silver. But this is not enough. The stipend barely covers the basic costs. To truly prosper, you must seek glory and plunder on the battlefield. You must take prisoners. This is the dark economic heart of knighthood. In medieval warfare, a captured knight is worth far more alive than dead. A nobleman or wealthy knight taken prisoner can be held for ransom, and that ransom can be enormous, sometimes equivalent to several years of income for his family. If you capture an enemy knight in battle, he becomes your property, and you can negotiate directly with his family for his release. This system of ransom is the primary way that a knight can become wealthy. It is not about honor. It is about profit. You now spend your days waiting for the call to war. When your lord summons you, you must respond immediately, bringing your full entourage of horses, servants, and equipment. You must be ready to fight for 40 days, the standard period of feudal military service, and you must do so at your own expense. If the campaign lasts longer, your lord may pay you additional wages, but often he does not. This is your duty. This is the price of your title. When the call finally comes, you ride to war. The journey itself is exhausting. You travel in full armor only when danger is near. Otherwise, you wear a lighter coat and helmet to save your strength. The roads are muddy tracks, and rain turns them into rivers of thick, sucking muck. You sleep in a tent, if you are lucky, or on the ground, wrapped in a cloak. The food is simple: hard bread, salted meat, and whatever can be foraged or stolen from the villages you pass through. You begin to understand that war is not a series of glorious battles. War is mostly waiting. You wait for orders. You wait for the enemy to appear. You wait in the rain, in the cold, in the baking sun. You wait while disease spreads through the camp, dysentery, and fevers that kill more men than swords ever will. You see fellow knights, men who survived years of training and dozens of battles, die shivering in a tent, their bowels turned to water, your strength drained away by illness. And then, when the waiting ends, the true horror begins. You learn that a medieval battle is not a tournament. There are no rules, no referees, no mercy. The battlefield is a slaughterhouse. You are ordered to mount your destrier and form up with the other knights in a line. The noise is overwhelming. The screaming of men, the shrieking of horses, the clang of metal on metal. Your heart pounds so hard you can feel it in your throat. Your mouth is dry. Your hands, encased in steel gauntlets, tremble on the lance. The order is given. You dig your spurs into your horse's flanks, and the destrier surges forward. You are part of a cavalry charge, a thundering wall of iron and horseflesh, and you are heading directly toward an enemy line bristling with spears. The world narrows to a single point, the man you are aiming for. You lower your lance. You brace yourself. And then, with a sickening crash, the lines collide.
You survive the battle, not because of skill, though your training helped, but because of sheer dumb luck. The enemy line broke before yours, and the men-at-arms on foot were slaughtered as they tried to flee. You managed to capture a knight, a young man not much older than yourself, and you have claimed him as your prisoner. He will be worth a ransom of 200 silver marks, enough to pay for your armor repairs and keep you solvent for another year. This is victory, measured not in glory but in coin, but the battlefield has left its mark on you. Your left shoulder is badly bruised from a mace blow that dented your pauldron. Your right knee, twisted during a fall from your horse, aches constantly. You are only 25 years old, and your body already feels decades older. You have seen men die. You have killed men. The romance of knighthood is gone, replaced by the simple, grinding reality of survival. When you return from the campaign, you seek another way to earn your fortune and your reputation. You turn to the tournament. The tournament is the great spectacle of the knightly world, a combination of sport, social event, and economic opportunity. It is also one of the most dangerous activities you will ever undertake. The tournament begins with days of preparation. You and your squire travel to the tournament grounds, usually a large open field near a castle or wealthy town. The field is surrounded by wooden stands filled with spectators. Nobles, merchants, peasants, all come to watch the knights fight. You set up your pavilion, a large, brightly colored tent that serves as your base. Your coat of arms is displayed on a banner outside, a public declaration of your identity. This is not just sport, this is advertising. You are here to prove your worth. The most prestigious event is the joust. You mount your destrier and grip your lance, a long wooden pole tipped with a blunted steel point. Across the field, your opponent does the same. A wooden barrier, called the tilt, runs down the center of the field, separating your horse from his. This prevents collisions and makes the joust slightly safer, though safe is a relative term. The herald gives the signal and you charge. The ground shakes beneath your horse's hooves. You lean forward, bracing the lance against your armpit, aiming for your opponent's chest. The impact is incredible. Even with blunted weapons, the force of two armored men on galloping horses colliding is immense. If you strike cleanly, your opponent will be lifted from his saddle and thrown backward, slamming into the ground with bone-crushing force. If you miss, or if your opponent strikes you first, you will be the one lying in the dirt, gasping for air, your vision blurred. You strike true, your lance splinters against his breastplate, and he crashes to the ground. The crowd roars. You wheel your horse around and raise the broken lance in triumph. You have won this pass, and you have earned points in the eyes of the judges and the admiration of the crowd. But you also know that your opponent is injured. You saw the way he fell, the way his head snapped back. You will learn later that he survived, but with a broken collarbone and a severe concussion. This is the price of glory. The melee is even more chaotic. This is a mass combat, dozens of knights fighting in teams, trying to capture opponents and claim ransoms. It is closer to real warfare than the joust. You ride into the swirling mass of horses and men, and within seconds you are surrounded by chaos. Swords clang against armor. Horses rear and scream. Men shout orders and curses. You strike at a knight to your left, your sword clanging off his helmet. He wheels and strikes back, and the blow to your shoulder sends a jolt of pain through your body. You grapple with him, trying to wrestle him from his horse. Finally, with the help of another knight from your team, you drag him to the ground and claim him as your prisoner. He will pay you a ransom, a small one, enough to cover your expenses for this tournament. But the tournament is not just about combat, it is also about display. In the evenings, the lords and ladies gather for feasts. In the great hall of the nearby castle, this is where the social game of knighthood is played. You are expected to be charming, courteous, and refined. You must speak eloquently, compliment the ladies, and demonstrate that you are not merely a brute in armor but a cultured gentleman. This is the ideal of chivalry, the code of conduct that every knight is supposed to embody. You sit at a long wooden table laden with food. The feast is a display of wealth and power. There are platters of roasted venison, whole pigs with apples in their mouths, peacocks roasted and re-feathered for display. There are pies filled with spiced meats, fish in rich sauces, and loaves of fine white bread. Servants pour wine from silver pitchers, musicians play in the gallery above. It is a scene of opulence, and you are part of it, at least for tonight. But even here you are performing. You must eat with proper manners, using your knife to cut your meat into small pieces and eating with your fingers in the prescribed fashion. You must drink in moderation, as drunkenness is a disgrace. You must engage in witty conversation, reciting poetry if called upon, and demonstrating your knowledge of courtly love, the elaborate code of romantic behavior that governs interactions between knights and noble women. You learn that this is exhausting in its own way. The tournament is a stage, and you are an actor. Every gesture, every word, every action is watched and judged. Your reputation is built not only on your prowess in combat but on your behavior at the feast. A knight who wins every joust but insults a lady or behaves like a drunkard will be shunned by polite society and will find it difficult to secure patronage from the great lords. You also learn the myth of courtly love. The poets and minstrels sing of knights performing great deeds to win the favor of a beautiful lady, often the wife of another lord. The songs describe chaste, noble love, a spiritual connection that elevates both the knight and the lady. The reality is more complicated. Some knights do form genuine emotional bonds with noble women, but these relationships are fraught with danger. Adultery, even the suspicion of it, can lead to scandal, duels, and ruin. Most knights are far more concerned with securing a profitable marriage alliance than with romantic love. As the feast ends and you retire to your tent, you feel the weight of your double life. By day, you are a warrior, trained to kill efficiently and without hesitation. By night, you are expected to be a poet, a gentleman, a paragon of virtue.
War comes again, and this time it is not a quick campaign, but a long, grinding siege. Your lord has laid claim to a rival's castle, and you are ordered to join the besieging army. You arrive to find a sprawling military camp surrounding a formidable stone fortress perched on a hill. The castle's walls are thick and high, and its gates are sealed shut. This will not be won in a single glorious charge. The siege camp is a miserable place. Thousands of soldiers are packed into a sea of tents, cooking fires, and latrines. The smell is overpowering. Human waste, rotting food, smoke, and unwashed bodies. Disease spreads quickly in such conditions. Within the first few weeks, dysentery rips through the camp. You see strong men reduced to hollow-eyed shadows, too weak to stand. You avoid the sickness, but only barely, and you live in constant fear of the next outbreak. Your role in the siege is both active and passive. On Sundays, you mount your horse and join raiding parties, attacking supply convoys trying to reach the castle or burning the surrounding villages to deny the enemy resources. These raids are brutal. You learn that the laws of chivalry, the noble codes you swore to uphold, do not apply to peasants. Villages are torched, crops are destroyed, and livestock is slaughtered or taken. The people who live in these villages are not your concern. They are resources to be denied to your enemy. On other days, you are assigned to direct assaults on the castle walls. Your engineers have built massive siege engines, trebuchets that hurl stones the size of a man's torso, battering rams to smash the gates, and siege towers, wooden structures as tall as the walls themselves. You watch as the trebuchets launch their projectiles with a deep, resonant thud. The stones arc through the air and crash into the castle walls, chipping away at the stonework, but the walls are thick and progress is slow. When the order comes to assault the walls, you feel the familiar cold knot of fear in your stomach. You are part of the storming party, and you will climb the siege tower and attempt to cross onto the battlements. The tower is pushed forward on wooden wheels, rolled slowly toward the castle by teams of men. You and a dozen other knights wait inside, packed together in the dim, hot interior. Arrows and crossbow bolts slam into the wooden sides with sharp, splintering cracks. You hear men screaming outside as they are struck down. The tower finally reaches the wall, and a drawbridge is dropped from the top of the tower onto the battlements. You are near the front, and you charge across the narrow bridge. The defenders are waiting. A man in a mail coat swings a warhammer at your head. You raise your shield and feel the impact shudder through your arm. You thrust your sword forward, aiming for the gap between his helmet and his gorget, the metal collar protecting his throat. Your blade finds flesh, and he falls, gurgling and choking on his own blood. The fighting on the walls is savage and chaotic. There is no room for grand technique, no space for chivalrous gestures. Men fight in a crush of bodies, stabbing, shoving, and bludgeoning. You slip on the blood-slicked stone and nearly fall from the wall, catching yourself at the last moment. You see a friend, a knight you trained with as a boy, take a crossbow bolt to the face. He drops without a sound, and his body is trampled by the surging crowd. But the defenders are too strong, and the assault is repelled. You retreat, climbing back into the siege tower, and the tower is pulled back. You have failed, and a dozen men are dead. This is the reality of siege warfare. It is not glorious. It is a slow, grinding process of attrition, where small gains are paid for in blood. Finally, after 3 months, the castle's water supply runs out. The defenders, starving and desperate, negotiate a surrender. The gates are opened, and you ride inside. You expect to find a defeated but honorable garrison, but what you see is a nightmare. The people inside are skeletal, their faces hollow, and their eyes vacant. Many have died of starvation or disease, and their bodies have been stacked in a corner of the courtyard. The smell of death is overwhelming. Your lord takes possession of the castle, and the defeated knights are taken prisoner. They will be ransomed, and you will receive a share of that ransom. But the commoners, the soldiers and servants who held the walls, are shown no mercy. Many are executed, others are driven out to starve. This is the harsh logic of medieval warfare. Knights have value, and are treated with a measure of respect. Commoners do not, and they are disposable. As you ride away from the conquered castle, you feel no triumph, only exhaustion and a deep, bone-weary disgust. You have seen too much death, caused too much suffering. You are only 30 years old, but you feel ancient. Your body is a catalogue of injuries. A broken rib that never healed properly. A scar on your cheek from a sword cut. A persistent pain in your lower back from years of wearing armor. You have survived, but you are not whole. You return to your lord's estate and find that your financial situation has not improved. The ransom money from the siege helped, but it was not enough to cover your debts. Your armor needs constant repair, your horses need replacing, and your servants must be paid. You are trapped in a cycle of debt and violence, always one campaign away from ruin. You also learn that the world is changing. Warfare is evolving. The longbow, a weapon wielded by common archers, is proving devastatingly effective against mounted knights. At battles like Crécy and Agincourt, English archers will slaughter French knights by the thousands, shooting arrows that punch through armor at long range. The age of the armored cavalry charge is ending, and the knight, the warrior who has dominated European battlefields for centuries, is becoming obsolete. You hear rumors of new weapons, cannons that can shatter castle walls, and handguns that can kill a knight from a distance. The social order you were born into, the rigid hierarchy that placed knights at the top of the military world, is beginning to crack. The future belongs not to the armored nobleman, but to the common soldier, the professional infantryman, and the gunner. Your way of life is dying, and you know it. For many knights, the end comes not in a blaze of glory, but in quiet obscurity. You are one of the lucky ones. You survive long enough to retire, returning to a small manor granted to you by your lord in recognition of decades of service. You are 45 years old, and your body is broken. You walk with a pronounced limp from an old leg wound that never healed correctly. Your hands, once steady enough to wield a sword with precision, now tremble from nerve damage caused by too many impacts absorbed through your gauntlets. You cannot wear armor anymore. The weight is too much for your ruined back and knees. You spend your days managing your small estate, overseeing the peasants who work your fields, and settling petty disputes in the manor court. It is a quiet life, and after so many years of violence, the quiet is both a relief and a torment. You have no wife, no children. You spent your youth and your prime in service to your lord, and there was never time to build a family. Now, in your solitude, you feel the weight of that choice. Other knights are not so fortunate. You hear news from traveling merchants and messengers. A former comrade, a knight who fought beside you at a dozen sieges, died penniless, his lands seized by creditors. Another was crippled in a tournament accident, and now begs for alms outside a church. A third was executed for treason after a failed rebellion against his lord. The life of a knight, you realize, rarely ends well. The skills that made you valuable in youth strength, aggression, endurance, become liabilities in age. Society has little use for an old warrior. The transformation from historical reality to romantic legend begins almost immediately. Even in your own lifetime, you see it happening. Traveling minstrels perform songs in the great halls, songs about King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table, about Lancelot and Gawain and their impossible quests. These songs bear no resemblance to the life you lived. The knights in the songs are perfect, noble, and pure. They fight only for justice, they never feel fear, and they certainly never worry about money or debt. The songs erase the mud, the blood, the disease, and the desperation. They create a fantasy. The process accelerates after the medieval period ends. By the 5th, 10th, and 16th centuries, as gunpowder weapons make armored knights truly obsolete, nostalgia for the age of chivalry grows. Writers and poets, looking back at a supposedly simpler, more honorable time, craft elaborate tales of knightly virtue. They ignore the reality that knights were often little more than heavily armed thugs, that chivalry was a code honored more in the breach than the observance, and that medieval warfare was as brutal and cynical as any in history. The most influential work is Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, published in 1485. Malory, writing in prison, created a sprawling narrative of King Arthur and his knights that became the definitive version of the legend. His knights are tragic heroes, men striving for an impossible ideal of honor and purity. They are everything the real knights were not, selfless, spiritual, and doomed by their very goodness. The book is beautiful, moving, and utterly divorced from historical reality. The Romantic movement of the 19th century completes the transformation. Writers like Sir Walter Scott and novels like Evenot create a vision of the medieval knight as the ultimate hero, brave, courteous, and devoted to his lady. Artists paint glowing images of knights in shining armor, kneeling before beautiful maidens in sunlit gardens. The paintings show no mud, no scars, no exhaustion. The armor gleams, the horses are white and perfect. The world is clean and bright and noble. This romanticized vision is then carried into the 20th century by film and television. From Errol Flynn swashbuckling his way through the adventures of Robin Hood to the Knights of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the image is endlessly reproduced and parodied, but never truly challenged. Even the parodies, in mocking the legend, reinforce its power. We all know what a knight is supposed to be, even if we laugh at the absurdity of it. The modern fantasy genre, from Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings to George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, to countless video games and tabletop RPGs, continues to draw on the imagery of the medieval knight. Some of these works, particularly Martin's, make an effort to show the brutal reality behind the legend, but even they can not escape the fundamental appeal of the image. The lone warrior in armor serving a higher cause, standing against the darkness. Why does the legend endure? Why do we cling to this vision of knighthood, despite overwhelming evidence that the reality was so much harsher and more complex? Perhaps it is because the myth fulfills a deep human need. The knight represents order in a world of chaos. He represents the possibility that strength can be tempered by virtue, that violence can be directed toward justice. In a world where we feel powerless, the knight offers the fantasy of agency, of being able to right wrongs through sheer force of will and the strength of your arm. The knight also represents a clear moral universe. In the legends, you always know who the hero is and who the villain is. The lines are clear, the choices are simple. The real medieval world, like our own, was morally ambiguous. Knights served brutal lords, fought in unjust wars, and committed atrocities in the name of duty. But the legend erases that ambiguity. It gives us a world where honor means something, where sacrifice is rewarded, and where the hero always, eventually, wins. And so the myth survives, passed down through generations, adapted and reinvented for each new age. The knight in shining armor, riding forth to defend the innocent, remains one of our most powerful and enduring archetypes. It is a lie, but it is a beautiful lie, and we seem to need it. You, the old knight sitting in your cold manor, know the truth. You know that the armor was a prison, that the code of chivalry was more often ignored than followed, and that the glory you were promised never arrived. You know that you were not a hero, but a tool, wielded by men more powerful than yourself, in pursuit of wealth and power. You know that the life of a knight was not an adventure, but a long grinding ordeal that left you broken and alone. But even you, in your darkest moments, cannot help but wonder if there was something noble in it after all. Not in the grand gestures or the tournaments, but in the small moments. The time you helped a fellow knight to his feet after a fall, the time you spared a defeated enemy, the time you kept your word, even when it cost you dearly. Perhaps chivalry was never a reality, but merely an aspiration, a distant star to aim for, even knowing you would never reach it. Thank you for joining me on this long journey tonight. From the harsh training of a page to the broken body of an aging warrior, from the brutal reality of medieval warfare to the birth of an immortal legend, our voyage through history is now at an end. I hope you will return as we continue to explore the stories found in the shadows of the past. I wish you a calm and peaceful night.